I think the idea of the afterlife is nonsensical, but in addition to being nonsensical, it is also often used to manipulate people. The fact that an idea is used to manipulate and control people does not make it wrong necessarily, but I do think we ought to subject such ideas to heightened scrutiny.
When religion is totalitarian in its practice and its theory, it claims to know things it can't know, and it claims to have powers it cannot have. It says if you make the right propitiations and the right donations, you may get paradise, and if you don't, you may get an eternity of pain. That includes, by the way, the souls of unbaptized children of the millions who Sam mentioned.
And of course this also leads to people in power using it as a means of controlling people while they are still alive. When you're in the business of selling indulgences, it can also be quite profitable.
But why do they want hell? Why would a wish fulfiller invent the inferno? Well, I think that's pretty obvious. It's for other people to go to.
People often believe in the afterlife because they like the idea that death isn't final and they find that comforting, but they also believe in it for the more spiteful reason that they like the idea that people who have wronged them will get some kind of punishment.
It will happen to all of us that at some point you'll get tapped on the shoulder and told, not just that the party's over, but slightly worse, the party's going on, but you have to leave. and it's going on without you. That's the reflection, I think, that most upsets people about their demise. All right then, because it might make us feel better, let's pretend the opposite. Instead you'll get tapped on the shoulder and told, great news, this party's going on forever, and you can't leave. You've got to stay. The boss says so, and he also insists that you have a good time.
If you really think about it, an eternity in the afterlife doesn't seem that great at all. Even if you're not in hell, eternal existence seems like it would be very tedious.
Communism, for example, which repudiated the idea of the afterlife and therefore thought you have to create utopia here, and it led it to horrendous misdeeds throughout the 20th century. So the belief in the afterlife can be totalitarian and terrible, but so can the idea that there's nothing after this world and therefore you have to perfect human beings here. It can work both ways.
Wolpe seems to be saying that since the attempts the communists made to improve the world were horrible, it is therefore inherently dangerous to try to improve the world. But the communists were making the same mistake as the people who believe in the afterlife are making. They had an unskeptical faith that if we do X, Y, and Z, we are guaranteed a utopia. That kind of thinking is disastrous regardless of whether you believe that utopia can be expected on Earth or in the afterlife.
Take the case that I still can't get out of my mind. You remember reading about it, the woman in Austria who was kept in a cellar by her father for 30 years and raped every day and bore him children who he raped also. Picture how she must have prayed, how she must have wearied heaven with her prayers, and how accidental was her release that we even know about. You're told those tears will be dry, that'll be compensated. In other words, that has to mean her suffering was part of the plan. We let that happen. Yes, we did know. We do take responsibility. That was part of the design, but it'll be better later. I think that makes her suffering meaningless, and in fact rather obscene. We'll do that to her, but we'll make it up later on.
If suffering is part of the plan, it makes us all pawns in some weird game Yahweh is playing. If it's the result of free will, then free will is a horrible thing to allow. Apologists will often say that a world with free will is better, on the whole, than a world in which everyone can only ever do what is best for themselves and others. I don't see why that's the case at all.